So it appears that Nancy Pelosi has called out the squad once again, man. This war is very, very interesting. But this time it appears that this is going to be an excerpt from what appears to be an upcoming book. And so this headline reads, Pelosi's advice for the squad. You're not a one-person show. So Speaker Nancy Pelosi, in a soon-to-be-released biography, offered advice to the squad, telling the progressive group of female lawmakers in the House, you're not a one-person show. Axios reports that Pelosi gave the blunt piece of advice to the group, which consists of Democratic Representatives AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib, during one of 10 separate interviews she had with the book's author, USA Today Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page. You're not a one-person show. This is the Congress of the United States, Pelosi said of the advice she would offer the lawmakers. Pelosi and the squad have exchanged numerous barbs since the group was elected in the 2018 wave. So basically what you can see here is in this upcoming book is going to be some comments about the squad. Now, let's sort of talk about this comment, right? You're not a one-person show. So there's a couple different ways to look at this, right? One way to look at this simply is, I think definitely a lot of this has to do with jealousy because Nancy Pelosi, she really likes attention. She's not a masterful legislator. All of her accomplishments were very minor, mediocre things that happened under Democratic majorities. That's not a masterful legislator. She wants to be the center of attention, and she got very jealous that AOC, the young guard, was essentially coming up, and now she's getting all the attention. AOC became the media cow for a while. They were covering her nonstop. They still do to this day. So I do believe a lot of that is jealousy for sure. But also, there is truth to this comment. It is true that, yes, there's no way for them to be able to just entirely dictate what they want. And so this is where you kind of have to figure out, how to maneuver, how to do this before getting more people. It was basically 4 squad members, 5 if you want to count, maybe 6, I guess, if you put in Pramila Rowe and if you wanted to include Ayanna Pressley. So there are ways that the progressives can do things that will force the Democrats' hand, and they need to leverage that power and use that power again. They have enough members to where the squad now does, where if the Democrats don't want to come to the table and re-edit one of their bills, they can tank it single-handedly if there's 0 Republicans supporting it. So they do have some leverage, but what you need to keep in mind is this is a system that has been built to be corrupt. Keep in mind, bills have to make it out of committee. How do you even get onto a committee? You need seniority and or to be voted into the committee by either those committee members. And so who sits on these committees? They're senior members of Congress. They're people with seniority. People have been there for 10, 15 years. Why is Bernie Sanders Senate Budget Chairman? He's been in the Senate for a minute now. And so he was able to, get that position because he's been there for a long-ass time and he's been putting in work there. And so that's the way the system is set up. So the idea that 4 to 6 people could come in and just change the system and get Medicare for All passed and all this stuff is straight up bonkers. It's borderline, if not just completely delusional. So we needed more numbers. We're getting more numbers. Now there's a lot of leverage points that can be exercised. Like, for example, forcing the vote can be a good idea for sure. There are ways it could backfire, but seeing as the way that Kirsten Sinema was completely, just called out for her no vote on $15 minimum wage, I think it would be an effective maneuver to at least get people's names for a vote and have them written down and start this movement to call people out. I think that's a very good idea. It does have a few possibilities to backfire, but that would be a good way to do it. That would be a good starting point for sure. And so there are these kinds of things they can do, but expecting the whole farm is just kind of insane. Now, it's up to between 12 and 20, depending on whether or not you want to count someone like Katie Porter as part of the squad or whatever. The Congressional Progressive Caucus should be around like 20 real members, and they have instituted rules where if you're not voting in favor of the way that the Progressive Caucus is voting, your ass is booted. So you can't just pay the $4,000 or $400, whatever it costs, and then be like, hey, look, I'm a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. You can't do that anymore. So those are the kinds of different elements here. And so we are going to need more numbers. We need more seniority. So I do think that preaching at least some patience, because there seems to be this incredibly lofty idea that things were going to get changed in 2 years with a bunch of freshman congresswomen. You're fucking insane. You're literally bonkers. And so then there's this idea of like full-on, full-out war against someone like Nancy Pelosi. And by the way, that was the original strategy of AOC. Remember, she took part in a protest in front of her room, or whatever it was, her speaker room, with the climate protest. I forget what, was it Sunrise, I think it was. So she took that strategy, but then she changed course because I think she had a change of heart as to what it was that was the best strategy. So, there was like a recent vote where she tried to get onto a committee, but she was not voted on. And it was a private vote, by the way, but one of the comments that were either reported or was public, it was from Henry Cuellar from Texas, who, remember, AOC supported Jessica Cisneros over him. And so, he was like, well, we remember the people who supported us in our races. So she's getting voted out of the committees or not being allowed into the committees because she's challenging them. So it's like, it almost feels like a catch-22 for the squad members. But, I would definitely preach some patience because this does have some truth to it. So definitely, while it's good to expect things like forcing the vote and stuff like that, don't expect to have Medicare for all by now or in 2 years. We simply need more numbers. It's just not going to work with even 12 to 20 people. When you start to get into that range, you really start to have power. But remember, like a lot of people can compare and contrast with the Tea Party's power. Remember, guys, that the Tea Party was preventing stuff from getting passed, not passing stuff. Those two things are very different things. Not only that, there were tons, millions of corporate dollars, okay, being poured in there, millions upon millions, okay? But preventing stuff from getting passed is way easier. And then there's the catch-22 that AOC faces, where it's like, okay, you don't support a meager, like half-assed, basically mediocre help plan or whatever, and so you get called out for that. But you were calling for an upgraded package, and so you get called out by liberals and people for not voting for the mediocre shit. But then, if you do vote for it, then you get called out by progressives. And so it's just like, god damn, this is really tough web. And so you really do have to, at the very least, sort of be considerate of what they're going through. This is difficult shit. This is not, this isn't just YouTube politics or whatever. This is serious shit, okay? And so that's kind of the difference. And so getting things passed are very difficult. So, have some nuances, have some reasonable expectations, and just kind of understand what's going on here. But Pelosi is definitely exhibiting some jealousy, a lot. Actually, I should say a lot of jealousy. But keep in mind that there is actually some truth to this statement. And, keep it in the back of your head, all right? And whether or not the best idea is to do full throttle war, I don't really think it's the best idea to do full throttle war against corporate Democrats in that way, because you need to pull those voters into your pool, especially if you're trying to sort of get in higher positions, because being in the House, you're in the lower chamber. You're not even in the upper chamber of the legislature. So in order to win a Senate race, you need a far more diverse pool of voters. So it's not really a smart move. I think there's a healthy medium between challenging power without completely exiling or exodusing all of your corporate support, corporate Democrat, liberal, whatever, milquetoast liberal supporters. I think that's the healthy medium to go through.